Welcome. Come on in. Let's have a little Archies to kick off our day here. How many
Yeah,
remember
it
the
was a
Archies growing up? Oh, yeah.
good choice.
Yay. Hi, everybody. Come on in. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to be here today. I got to tell you, I kind of rolled in. We have days like that when you just are just showing up. That's one of those days. I'm Kari Cardinale. I'm here in Santa Fe where we had a hard freeze this morning. Hence, I've got warm clothes on, and I'm excited to bring some very dear friends onto the stage in a moment to chat a little bit about how retirement affects us as individuals and as couples. So let me just do a quick checking in here. How many of you are here for the very first time, very first MEA live event, first rodeo with us? And how many of you, welcome. How many of you are alumni or old friends of MEA? Excellent. Welcome back. So some of you might know one of my favorite rituals to begin these gatherings is to create a little geographic blanket to bring us all together. Because, we're on so many Zooms, we feel disconnected, but let's get connected. So I just shared with you, I'm in Galisteo, New Mexico. Hop in the chat. Where are you in the world? Let's find out. Where is everybody coming in from? So pop in the chat where you are joining us from in the world. We've got Texas and Atlanta, Canada is here. Love it. Phoenix is here. San Clemente, California. Dallas is in the house. Kentucky, horse and bourbon capital. Come on now. I love Kentucky. Love it. Welcome. Hudson River's here. Love that. Tennessee's here. Welcome. New Mexico is here. Portland, Oregon. Love it. Great. Cabo's here. Awesome. Well, we're excited. So we have some time together to connect and chat, and we are launching brand new programs next year on this beautiful ranch in Santa Fe. And I'm excited to bring to the stage Bob and Amie Laura, who are going to be some of our very first thought leaders to join us on the ranch. I'm also going to bring Amy Tullius up, who is one of our top facilitators at the ranch, who will be helping to guide the experience. So hello, everybody. Good to have you guys here. So let me give a little background here. Bob and Amie Laura obviously are married. They are transition experts, and they're the co-creators of the Retirement Planning for Two workshop, which we'll be doing in January. Bob is a best-selling author and founder of Retirement Coaches Association. So he mixes his deep background in financial expertise with like what's actually going on with us inside to help tackle these challenges of retirement individually and as couples. Amie is a certified retirement coach and advocate. So she specializes in lifestyle design, relationship dynamics, helping to guide couples through the complexities of retirement together. So, with that, awesome. How many of you here are retired? So if you are retired, type retired in the chat. Let's see who's already retired. Rewired. I love that.
Love it.
Retired, rewired. I wish. Semi-retired. Okay, so here we go. So how many of you are thinking about it? Thinking about it, getting there, contemplating semi-retired. Okay. Love it. Thinking about it. Perfect. Designing it now, Jacqueline. You are in the right place. All right, so let's dive into this together. That you know, how Bob and Amie, I'll have to just also disclose, I've had the great opportunity to work with Bob directly, that we designed with a panel of other thought leaders, a online course called Reframing Retirement. We ran it as a boot camp, and Bob brought his deep expertise into the thinking of that content. I had a chance to teach that, show up as a facilitator in Baja for that week. And I'm so excited to bring Amie into the mix here to kind of add your expertise into this piece. So, Bob, knowing what I know about you with retirement and working with the coaches, I'd love to hear how you brought your beautiful wife into this journey and how you guys are seeing the benefits of doing this work together.
Yeah, so the really cool thing is Amy's worked with, retirees and keep baby boomers technically longer than I have. So we actually met at a bank where I ran the trust department. She ran a marketing department for our high deposit customers. And basically that was the connection, just talking about retirement. And I think what I have found is that I dig a lot more into like the psychology and kind of the context of it, but Amy's more like, whether you're 45, 55, 65, or 75, like you just become good friends with Amy real quick. And what that really opens for me with our work is she gets the inside scoop. And that stuff is it's super valuable because I find a lot of if you read a book about the non-financial side of retirement, I think they tend to be superficial and you can't go that deep. And so from an empirical evidence, like real stuff, what are couples thinking, saying, and doing? That's really where she draws on. And so I can run off on these tangents about different things, but she brings the real life component to it. And I think too, in all couples, there's the transactional person and the relational person. I'm a checklister. I'm trying to get things done, and she's more the nurturer. And so, to have that balance is a really powerful thing. And so that's been the nice thing is that I get the inside scoop from her. I can apply the context, but she builds those deep relationships and then can help guide people because she's talked to the real people and seen how it goes.
Mm. Amy, love that setup. Well, how awesome, right? Or you guys are all like, oh my God, this is so great. So tell us about your perspective on this work that you've been doing for so long, doing it together in real time with Bob as a partner. What are some of your insights that you've seen over the years?
I think, in the beginning, when I was running the marketing program and directing that for the bank that I had worked for, I really found that there was a really huge disconnect between spouses. And it was really sort of eye-opening to me. I was in my mid 20s and I just was so surprised that after years of togetherness and building a life together that people could feel so separated once they were retired. And these conversations would happen. And I think the nice balance that Bob and I offer is that um, I think that there's always that kind of that yin and yang. So there's kind of this balance of, him being the transactional side and me taking on more of this relational role because it's amazing what people will open up with. And I think a lot of times what I've seen, it's typically the nurturer or stereotypically the female in the role that is going to be the one that's going to say, we need to dive deeper. We need to do some work on this in our lives. It's often not going to be that transactional person because they're sort of satisfied, right? Like that they've got their retirement portfolio. They know that they've got their financial plan and that's meaningful for security, but it's not meaningful for life necessarily, right? It's so much more deeper than the numbers. And so it's really where I started realizing like, people have to invest just as much time, if not more, into the everyday aspects of life after work than even that portfolio. So I think it's really just about realizing that people need to invest in each other and also be willing to continue to grow. And retirement sort of viewed as this endpoint for some reason. It's just sort of where we've left it, I guess, from a marketing perspective. But really, like, if we're comfortable, we're not growing, and we need to just continue to be able to evolve as individuals, but also be willing to continue to evolve as spouses.
Hmm. Yeah. I'd love to have everybody put in the chat. What are some of your common perceptions of the challenges of retirement for couples? Let's hear what you think happens in the chat. I know that as that's coming through, yeah, it's a big transition. And some of you would say, well, I'm going to be going back to work, but I want to start a project or, so planning the day to day or boredom, having that space that's suddenly there that wasn't there before, and then your partner's there, different goals, different expectations of each other, getting in each other's space, because you have a routine. Maybe you don't want to do the same things. Maybe you have different, patterns that you invested in your work life that you trying to bring in here, spending more time in the same place at the same time together. Yes, definitely. So what we're talking about is a transition. That is the one thing at a midlife wisdom school that I have learned after working with thousands of folks from 50 countries is that all of these challenges are really a transition. The change is one thing, whether or not you've chosen to leave your job, you were laid off from your job, you had mandatory retirement, you're thinking about all those stories are one thing. But then what's happening with us on the inside is what you guys are sharing here. It's the transition of how do we get used to this new identity, this new schedule, this new pattern. Yeah, how do we not bring these workplace patterns into this new life, into this new circumstance? And I'm just going to pull I'm a big fan of metaphors. We believe that metaphors is like one of the best ways to imagine hard things. If Joseph Campbell had said, if you want to change your life, change your metaphor. And so we have a broad metaphor at MEA of transitions being like the caterpillar going into a chrysalis, going into a butterfly. And that, you may be caterpillars in your work life, and then all of a sudden one of both of you shift that pattern and it can feel kind of gooey and dark and unclear. And eventually you have these goals of what you would like to do. So let's hear from everybody in the chat now. What are some of your dreams about this next stage of life? And then I'm going to bring you guys in here to chat about your retirement metaphor. But what are your dreams that this is a pioneering generation? As I know, Amie and Bob, you guys are recognizing we're living longer. We have the active capacity to be busy into our 60s, into our 70s, into our 80s, and maybe haven't even realized how much dreaming we could be doing. So I hear traveling, working out, being healthy, adventure. So making more time for artwork, leaving a legacy. Yeah. So either one of you, Bob or Amie, do you want to jump in and just reflect on what you're seeing from everybody here, both in some of those concerns and some of the visions that everyone's holding for what they'd like?
I think, right off the bat, this is what we're doing the class for. It's, this whole, it's a lot, and there's a lot of factors to sort out. And I think, even right now for Amie and I, like, we have some retirement plans. We consider ourselves semi-retired because of the lifestyle we created. Um, but in 10 years, it can change so much. And, like, we don't have grandkids yet. We don't want them yet, but we're getting close. But like, there's so many things that can come up. And I think one of the biggest challenges I see with couples is they keep it all up here and they think they kind of know, like, well, I know Amie's going to want to do this. And this is what we've talked about for years, and it may not be the case. And it's not a right or wrong type of a thing, but it is, for most people, there's stuff going around in their head they don't know how to sort out or who to talk to about it. And it's not a need for therapy, but a lot of times it's not only coming together with experts who have sorted this out for people, but it's also hearing from other people. And so we get to see both sides. Here's what I'm concerned and worried about. And technically, I know the process you went. If you were to ask people, what are you concerned and worried about? The chat box fills up really fast, faster than what are your hopes and dreams, because this is the nagging stuff. And so I think it's important to normalize that people can feel out of sorts. They're excited about these pieces, but when you're planning for two people, it's hard. And I think it's really, people think they're on the same page, but a lot of times they're not even in the same book. And that's okay. But then you have to have a process, a proven process, right? Not just like, hey, we made this up yesterday, we hope it works. We've taken hundreds of people through this stuff. And so I think it's really about admitting really where you're at, seeking out the help and then using a process to kind of sort through it.
I think just to sort of piggyback on what you're saying too, it's important that we get out of not only our own heads, but out of our own space. And that's where we find like actually having like destination workshops are so helpful, because it removes the stress and the pressure of kind of like everyday life. And it really gives people the opportunity to see beyond their own four walls, so to speak. And so I think that when you can just sort of immerse yourself in something and you're showing up with people who are like-minded. So, like other people are going to be talking about the same thing. They're sharing concerns. It's really incredible how that environment is able to shift even those transactional people to really start making some progress and some headway and really being able to relate more to each other's partners. So it's really it's something special to happens. I don't know how to articulate that. But it's an amazing thing when you bring partners together and you start to realize, like, I've never shared this with Bob before. He never knew that I wanted to do A, B, and C. Like, and when you have those ahas about your partner, it's really kind of cool because it keeps the relationship fresh, it renews it, and it becomes exciting again. And so to see those pieces fall into place is really remarkable to be a part of.
Plus, real quick, we have a perfect relationship with no family issues, and so we model perfection. I'm kidding, like it's a whole like at some point there's going to be some war stories about whose family's more jacked up or all, just with blended. There's so many. It's a lot, and I think it's just it's. I think it's also that vulnerability that really says if there's anything we're probably really good at, it's what we've messed up or what we've seen other people mess up and fail with. And so it's not just how do you create this great successful model, it's more how do you avoid these things or work through it. So it's that vulnerability and just the real life experience and the authenticity of this is what it's really about and kind of working through it.
Mm. And let's reflect. We deliberately set these two up to come at the beginning of 2026 because what do we love to do at the beginning of every year? We love to set goals. Yep, I saw you say it, Denise. Yeah, we love to set goals. We love to plan. We love to like use the time to really imagine something different. And so, what an opportunity as a couple to come to Santa Fe. It's actually spectacularly beautiful. I'm going to bring Amie in here. It's such a beautiful time of year to be in Santa Fe with the beautiful Kiva fireplaces, and it's cozy. And to your point, Amie, Laura, that one of the things that we foster here at Amie is a lot of opportunity kind of for storytelling that you could watch a YouTube video on retirement planning for couples anytime. But there's something that unlocks when you actually start talking out loud and hearing other people and realizing you're in the same place as somebody else. And suddenly it gives permission to really lean into deciding, exploring, imagining something new. So, Amie, I'd love to bring you into this conversation here to share a little bit about what it's like to come to the ranch and what are some of the opportunities that people would have to do in and around exploring these topics with Bob and Amie.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to do it. I loved what you said about the destination, Amie. Like it just makes so much sense. And as I'm listening to you, I'm so wishing my parents would have had this because it was actually it was a rough spot for them, like in their relationship when they both retired. So I'm excited that other people are going to have you guiding them. But the ranch in January is so beautiful. I don't know why. Like I'm sure there's something atmospheric that happens, but the stars are so crisp in the winter. And here we're just a little bit outside of Santa Fe, and we're in a geologic basin. And so it's like we have a whole dome of stars. Um, and you can see more stars here than anywhere else I think I've been. Like we have very little light pollution and it's really crisp and really beautiful in the winter. Um, we have a bunch of pinyon pines here. So there's always this kind of like smell of pinyon pine smoke. And sitting by the fireplace, as Kari said, is one of the loveliest things. Um, and then there's hiking, there's horseback riding, there's often crafts that we will do, which is fun because it's kind of like going to camp, optional, of course. And then it's just nice to be meeting people in similar situations. So it's really beautiful this time of year. So I'm looking forward to seeing you.
And so you'll have this great space and you'll probably wear clothes like what I'm wearing and be cozy. And Bob and Amie have like a plan for you. So doing this in January, is great because they have a plan that they're going to take you through, a 12 to 18 month plan. So let's talk about that. For the planners, tell us, what are you going to take us through?
Yeah, we have specific exercises, so one of the things we often ask people, one of my favorite retirement questions is, how will you know if you're winning at retirement? And a lot of people don't have a response. They know how to win at work, even win with their family, but they haven't thought through what does that really look like. And I firmly believe like what people need is no different than a financial plan. A financial plan is physical, it's concrete, it's right there. You can look at it. And so we want you to leave with a physical, concrete, written plan. And so we've I've been doing this specific to retirement coaching for almost 15 years. So it was unheard of at that. People thought I was crazy for even going down this path because financial services isn't really about that. And so what we've really developed is and proven over time and time again, this process that we take you through. And it's really about replacing your work identity, filling your time, staying relevant and connected, mentally and physically active, a way to express your spiritual beliefs, which is more like, what are your values and beliefs? How do you live those? And then it's about feeling financially secure. And so, with specific group discussions, interactions is really the process that we use. So, you walk away with something physical. Now, it's slightly different for everyone because it's your personal plan, and it's not all head down doing worksheets. There's tons of fun stuff and engaging. Like we've designed one of the worksheets kind of like based on the newlywed game, where how well do you know your spouse? And so it's fun and engaging, but it is this kind of reacclimating you to who you are and what's important. And there's a real process. It's not like, hey, here's the hot topic of the day, we're going to roll with it. So it's something concrete.
Sorry,
Just
my
to
Zoom went out, you guys. I'm back. So thank you for jumping in. Amie, carry on.
I was going to say, I think the nice thing is too is there is a variety of exercises and things that we walk you through, so that it does touch on different types of personality styles and different types of learning styles too. So it complements that the nurture, and it also complements that transactional person in the relationship. And I think that that's where kind of the magic happens. I love it when even Bob and I in our own marriage, when we can just be like, oh my gosh, like we were really both had the same goal in mind. We just had two different paths or mindsets and how we were going to get there. But when you come together and you're like, okay, we do have more aligned than we feel like we do. And I think after, whether you've been married a short time or a long time and you're entering this phase, your healthiest years in retirement are going to be first, those first 3 to 7 years. So to really maximize what you're doing then, you don't want to be figuring out the hard stuff as you start having, decline in health and other things start to happen. So it's really about maximizing your healthiest years in retirement as well, and preparing and talking about what's going to happen when, a medical diagnosis happens, or what are we going to talk about when, what if we have an adult child that needs to move back home with their kids? Like it is about just sort of preparing yourselves for conversations that will come up, and also just laying out what your real dreams and aspirations are for the retirement years.
And I want to share this too, because something that we also do, because a lot of times when you talk about retirement, it is financial stuff. And while this is not a financial workshop, one of the things I think is critically important for couples to discuss is the psychology of money. How were you brought up around money? What biases and beliefs do you have? Because again, I think and this is a big part of what all this is about, it's shifting your mindset. You have to think and act a certain way when you're working. But you also have to think and act a different way when you're retired. And there's a shift that has to take place. And again, it is just getting off autopilot and having a place in the space to really talk about these things, because the way you're thinking and feeling about your money may not be serving you well in this next part of the journey. And so it's not about, hey, how much money do you have and when's it going to last? That is important, but how are you perceiving it? And then even we like to touch on the legacy thing, because now it's not about, hey, what's going to happen when you're not here any longer, but what are you living out each day? And how are you using your money to create your best life instead of, oh, I got all this money, let me hoard it and hope I don't become a homeless person. I'm dependent upon, like, there's so much brainwashing in financial services that we just want to break you out of that stuff and really have you see it just from a better, fresher perspective that serves you and your family well instead of holding on to old and outdated ideas.
We'd like to say we're taking your success in your work life to make it from success to significance. And so, like, how are you really going to make a long-term impact? And so, some of that's part of the discovery process that we work through too, which is just so valuable that you can take those tools back and actually implement those to benefit your family, not just you as a couple, but there's a ripple effect to what happens in these workshops.
I love that we're broadening the conversation, right? That a lot of times when you hear about retirement, you just assume it's finances. And for many people, they might never want to stop working. Some might need to continue working because they need the money. Some people have accumulated what they need. So that's one part of the conversation. But what I love that you're focusing on is another part of the conversation, which is sort of this threshold experience that we hit in this second half of life, where we have this opportunity to reimagine ourselves. We have an opportunity to imagine our relationship and what does that look like, and our individual goals and our goals as a couple. And maybe one member of the partnership really wants to stretch, and maybe one had been home for a long time, wants to go do something big, and maybe another's just exhausted and wants to like take a minute and relax. And so let's talk a little, and that's you might pick up a new business at 70. You may relax for a while and then go get on a board, or you may decide to start a new nonprofit in your neighborhood, or you may decide to train to be a marathon runner. Gosh, so many things that we can evolve into. So let's talk a little bit about how do you see, or what are some suggestions for individuals and couples to support that ongoing journey of personal transition, transformation, development, particularly, how do we recognize that maybe our partner is needing to be pulled in a direction that might be a little bit different than where we're feeling pulled right now?
I think the most important thing, again, and this kudos to MEA, it's the tribe, right? And so when you come together and you're around 10 to 15 other couples, there's more input and insights. I mean, again, I've shared this hundreds of times. This is for Amie too. Like a lot of times when we do a presentation, there's something on the form, the response form that says, "What do you wish there was more time for?" They never say, "I wish to hear more of Bob's great stories or amazing insight." It never says that. It always says, "I wish there was more time to hear from other people." And that's obviously what you get at a retreat. And then, or they probably should say, spend more time talking with Amie. But so there's so much richness in between the sessions, I think, as well, because if you come just to one of our workshops, you're going to get us for an hour, hour and a half, and you're out of there. But now you're at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you have these different times. And again, I think for you know what you know. And so I think that if you can't hear from other couples what they're doing, and again, one of the biggest issues with retirement is people don't know. And so they are kind of they're looking for answers or ideas and insights, and you get that from the other people that are there. So I think it's really, really helpful to have other people's insights, not only just because they're sometimes fresh and new, but it could validate what you're thinking and feeling.
Yep. And I'm so glad, Angie, you raised your hand. I was just getting to that point. You read my mind, girl, that if you guys have questions, raise your hand like Angie did, and we'll bring you on up to have some chat. So, Angie, welcome.
Hey, I don't have a question, but want to say hey to Bob. So
Hey,
lovely to
Angie.
meet you, Amie. I attended the Reframing Retirement Workshop January 24 and retired January 25. It was fantastic in terms of setting me at ease with, yeah, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. And talk about personable facilitators. I'm sure, Amie, you would have just made the experience even better. We had a different facilitator before, but one of the things you were talking about is the knowing what the hopes and dreams are and making relationships with others who are there. There was a woman there, didn't know from Adam, who said she was going to scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef. And I said, oh, I want to do that. That was an old dream from decades ago. By God, I got certified. We went in March. It was fantastic. We continue to get together. These relationships are really meaningful, and I highly recommend going. You won't regret it. So there's my
Oh my
friend.
God, Angie, I love that. Made a new friend, hit a bucket list, had a dream trip all at once. Unbelievable. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you. And so give a little advice, now that you were kind of on the other side of some of these reflections, how are you doing now? What are the things you're thinking about now?
Well, I'll tell you, before I was all worked up about how am I going to spend my time? I'm a workaholic, and then what? And I have only had one day when I thought, what am I going to do in the future? But your time fills up. I have never been happier. I had no idea the burden, the weight that work was creating in my life. I don't know, maybe it's intuitive to other people, but I am having a blast. I can't believe it's been 10 months. Do it if you're thinking about it, and just listen to yourself. If there's a voice back there that says it's time, it's time. And then I'll say the downside is I have friends who are getting sick and dropping like flies, and you really need this time where while you're healthy to do some of those things. So as soon as you can, go part-time, retire. I just highly recommend it. And I was on the afraid side. So yeah,
Mm.
go for it.
Angie, what a beautiful testimonial there. So let's dovetail that to a question that Milan posted, which was how do you help people discover that new life purpose that's not based on work anymore? Amy, Laura, what would you say?
Geez. I think it really is tapping into who you were before work, right? I think we all have these, and it's kind of rediscovering your curiosities and having the time and the space to sort of dream about what that can look like, and taking on that and making a commitment to yourself. I think that's just something that it's easy to put yourself on the back burner. And what I like about having this retreat option is that it's really a time for you to discover the things that you've lost or the things that you didn't know were still there and of interest. So those are the types of activities and things that we do during our time together to try to help rediscover those things, and tap into that.
And maybe, Bob, you can talk about how you think of retirement as sort of this hopeful threshold.
Yeah, and I think even just to piggyback the purpose stuff, one of my favorite kind of stories about Michelangelo, he said, how do you create such beautiful statues? And he says, I don't. They're already inside. I just have to chisel the other stuff away. And so sometimes we just have to chisel some of the stuff away. And purpose is really about, it's not finding it. It's, and Richard Leiter, who you guys have on, like he's a good friend, like it's unlocking it. And so there's a process. And so I always like to emphasize retirement isn't a feeling. Just because you're there, you're not going to feel a certain way. You've got to be doing something. And so it really is putting yourself in different situations because it's hard. It's not like you're going to come to this and on the third day you're like, here's your purpose. Here's your purpose ticket. You're good. But really starting to rediscover, like Amy said, what are the things you're really curious about or that are important to you, that you want to kind of dig into, and it's slowly then using those as guideposts to kind of push you along. It's not this 1 second aha moment, but this process that you can kind of go through. And I think that's the exciting part. There's a country song out there says, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? I'd be doing this. Like, I like this. Like, I just really enjoy connecting and growing and talking to people. And so even if someone came and took it all away today, I would start doing it again tomorrow. And so, and I also will say, like, we have just little cute little formulas like the passion formula, like how to find a passion because passion can turn into purposes. What's timeless, tireless, and causes contagious energy. So again, what can you do that time goes by? That's tireless, you can keep doing. And then when you talk about, you get excited about it. And again, I think by the end of the session, we're going to know what you're excited about because you're going to have talked about it.
Well, let's
Um,
find out right now, everybody. Pop in the chat. What is something you absolutely love to do that you lose time when you do it? What are some of your favorite things? I know for me, it's gardening, it's hiking out in nature. Amie, Tullius, what are some of the things that you lose yourself in? I'm seeing cycling, traveling, cooking. Amy's trying to get that darn mute to come off and it's not wanting to.
There we go.
Needle pointing. Okay, there we go.
Definitely hiking. I went hiking with a friend the other day up, we have beautiful trails here, and we went 6 miles, and it felt like just a moment had passed. It was wonderful. But creative pursuits too. I also do a lot of writing, and I love that flow state that you get into with writing. But I mean, I was just thinking, like, what would I want to do? Like all of these things I've wanted to pick up with creativity, like, playing music and just other creative pursuits and traveling. And I was so inspired when Angie said she got certified in scuba diving. That is badass. The Great Barrier Reef, amazing. How inspiring.
I love what I'm seeing in here. The simple things like needle pointing or being creative, finding labyrinths, Liz, that's fun. And these are maybe the kinds of things that you haven't even given yourself a chance to think about, let alone compare notes with your partner to discover what they might be thinking about. And I suspect, Bob and Amie, that's probably one of the fun parts that you see when you work with couples. Maybe you could give us, do you have any stories or examples of what you've seen couples uncover and some of that excitement that they've found going through this process together?
so I can say before I was a financial advisor, I was a social worker. And as a social worker, I did some clinical work. And so you always had to do what's called take SOAP notes. And SOAP notes are subject, the objective, the assessment, and the plan. And the assessment, you always had to look at their body language. You couldn't say the client was mad, happy, or sad. You had to say they raised their eyebrows, or they sat back, or they did this. And so sometimes it's the subtle things when, whether I'm doing a presentation or Amie and I are talking to someone, I want to see, are these people facing each other? Are they talking in third person about the relationship or in person? And so sometimes it's that little stuff um, that really makes a difference in how they're even addressing or dealing with each other because it's been so long. And again, just to have that connection that we're on the same page. And I think there's lots of just great success stories in the basic uncovering of what's important to you. Because if a lot of times, and this is what's important about the process that we use, is we're not going to say, "Hey, Carrie, what are your values?" And you're going to say, "Well, my values are family, health," and you're like, "Okay, good. Now go live your life according to that. Good luck." It's much more deep, and I would say like obviously I think Daniel Pink stole all my stuff about regrets, but kidding, but regrets really, when you talk about stuff like that, they highlight values. And so we don't have to say, what do you value? We can say, what do you want to avoid regretting? And in that process, see, and that again is where the connection is, because Amy would agree, I'm sure, like anytime we go through exercises or do this kind of work, guess what is the lowest on the list? Money. The stuff people care about has nothing to do with money. And so for the first time, that is really where people realize, like, oh, why am I so stressed and worried about this? Because everything that's important to me has nothing to do with money. So I don't know, Amy, if you got another something else you want to share.
I think what's interesting too is we've had certain dynamics like where like to Bob's point about the body language, like couples will come in and you can tell there's distance. And by the end of the
The
time
guy's like
together,
this always.
yeah, right. You don't seem open, and it's more towards each other than even new people that they're meeting. So there is something to be said when suddenly you start noticing that language softens, right? You see a husband reach out and put his hand on the wife's knee, or you see a partner, walking in and grabbing their partner's hand. Like there's something to be said about those little subtleties because I think some of the work is happening obviously here, but we know there's conversations being had when they go back to their room, when they, that they're diving deeper. And we've had, this is actually a funny story Bob and I like to tell, because we had a client, a couple that we were working with. He was an engineer. She stayed home. They had a disabled daughter. So once the daughter was born, she stayed home with her. So she'd been in the house for 40 years while he had been working. Well, he was used to being a manager and supervising people. Well, now he doesn't have anybody to manage or supervise. And she came into the kitchen one evening to prepare dinner, and he had rearranged her pantry. And she was livid, right? But because he's used to organizing people and kind of managing, he didn't think that her pantry was efficient enough. And so it's interesting what will come out in some of these things, because you're just like, okay, like who would have thought that would have been an issue? She did get the pantry recalibrated to her preference, by the way. But, he thought he was being helpful. And sometimes it's revealing some of those pieces and then figuring out like, okay, like that wasn't necessary. I need to
And I
figure
think,
out what my new rules are.
and I think to piggyback that, one of the stories we had too, like I remember working with this couple and they're like, yeah, everything is great as long as he's out of the house every Tuesday and Thursday by 10 o'clock. Like that was set in stone that you will not be here at 10. And it's kind of funny, but technically it's really true. It's not only you have to plan how you're going to spend your time together and apart. And I think we've done all sorts of research and different things. Like sometimes it can make sense, especially in the first year, if the stereotypical husband was the driver or the manager. It's like, well, you're going to have your own little mini office in the downtown area. You're going to go there 3 days a week, and you can, talk whatever you want to do there. But it's little things like that does make a difference. Is that like and it's I think it's literally going that far, not just saying, yeah, we should talk about that. No, we should schedule and plan that. When are you going to be here and not be here? And then I think the other thing is just social connections. Like Amie is our social connector. And obviously, we both live still fairly busy lives, but she does a lot of the social connection. Well, all of a sudden, if I'm retired and now my fully dependent upon her, and so there are roles and responsibilities for each person. I still have to develop my own network. I cannot rely on her. And it's those kind of conversations that we have to break down and say it's not her job to fill my day in retirement. And sometimes that's not what people want to hear, but it's also it's having those conversations and opening up those discussions.
Yep.
And just to even follow up on that a little bit further, because I saw it come in, Barb had posted that she had somebody recently hire her to talk about how do I replace the 8 to 5 every day. And I think that's just like, that's where, Bob and I often say, like, we've kind of been brainwashed by the financial services industry. It's walks on beaches holding hands, right? It's you playing on the ground with grandkids, and it's traveling all the time, or you're at the golf course. You are literally trying to replace at a minimum 40 to 50 hours a week, and it's your awake time hours. So there is something that you do have to be super intentional about that. And it's simple things too, like, okay, we typically eat 3 meals a day, maybe with some snacks. Well, if I'm the one that's always prepared dinner, because that's my role in our marriage, does that mean now I have to make Bob 3 meals a day plus snacks? Like, that's a lot. I don't want to do that for him. I mean, I love him, but he can do something, so there are just some really like basic everyday things that you don't realize how frustrating and how stressful that can be on the marriage to figure out those little nuances that you didn't know were going to be a problem. And if there's just certain things that should be happening and should be shifting. And I think that you have to be willing to say goodbye to old roles and be open to new things. And so I think it is just about willing to be a lifelong learner and to always remain teachable. When we become unteachable, that's, I think, when we really miss out on the real fruit of life. So it's really just always maintaining that willingness to be teachable.
Mm. I'd love to bring up some of the topics that, I've certainly seen are things we should be thinking about as we're imagining an active 30 years. A lot of folks want to talk about what kind of grandparents they want to be, whether you have grandkids yet or not. Do you want to be the day-to-day grandparents? Do you want to be the occasional grandparents? Do you want to be the grandparents that take kids on vacation? How much time do you spend traveling to see the kids versus traveling for bucket list trips? Do you want to move to a new place? And does moving mean letting go of that whole network that you had to go pursue a dream of, a cabin in the mountains or moving closer to the kids? And what does that mean? Um, do you want to move to a foreign country and try that sort of adventure? So I'd love to hear from all of you. What are some of those bigger things that you're thinking about as you imagine the next stages of your life? What I just listed several, but let's hear in the chat. What are some of the bigger things you are thinking beyond the day-to-day scheduling that you're curious about? That certainly is common now that we have so many choices. It's not necessarily just work the same job, retire, stay in the same neighborhood, that we have a lot of opportunities to think different ways, thinking about moving to Europe part-time, traveling, boating, visiting friends, being somewhere else from the summer months. So, maybe having a second home or just a opportunity to travel a season of the year. Yeah, being abroad, learning a new language. So that's an interesting thing to think about and to plan. What do we have here? To explore your artistic potential. I'm the Grammy who sees the littles weekly, and it's wildly meaningful and fun, but it's created a hard spot around considering living somewhere new. Exactly. So we can be intentional or we can be reactive to the world, and time can go by. If there's this long desire to go someplace else, we're like, well, I got to watch the kids this week and maybe next year. That I think is really what you two are hoping that we can do together, is to have the intentionality of what are those things that you're thinking about and how do you back channel them into becoming a reality, right?
Yeah, I think there's a, Amy brought this up. There's a difference between good intentions and being intentional. And then again, I think even pre-retirees, it's not so much a time management issue as it is a priority management. And again, you have to recalibrate. It's just really what it boils down to. We all do it and we just need it. We may not want it, or there's all sorts of excuses why we can't do it. And it's actually why I love the weekend format, because I think one of the things was I can't take a week off to go to MEA. I'm not retired yet. I have to. No, it's okay. It's a weekend. So I think that's the beauty of this new format, is you can really be immersed in these things. And again, it's not about, you don't have to walk out of there with a crystal clear thing. What you need to walk out of there with is a new frame of mind, a way to think differently about this, a way to really do some things for yourself and then counterbalance it. Because again, as a financial advisor, I can't tell you how many people are worried about a stock market crash. Bob, do you think the stock market's going to crash? Like, it won't matter if your marriage crashes. If the other person is the most important person in the world to you, then you got to do some things to be more focused on taking care of that than you are about a stock market crash, because it won't matter. So it's so important just to realize that. And again, if we're going to be together for the next 30 or 40 years, there's going to have to be a lot of give and take. I personally know that I'm 4 years older than Amy, and so I'm going to need her to take care of me at some point. So I better be real nice along the way, when that comes down to it. But it's silly stuff like that that you really have to be thinking about, how do you take care of each other? And we joke around about we-tirement instead of retirement. Like, how do you really do this well together?
When I think Angie had brought it up when she hopped on and talked a little about her MEA experience, that she had a fear. She used the word fear about retiring, and we want to take that word away, right? We don't want you to be fearful. This should really be an exciting time. This should be a time that you should be really looking forward to, and that just imagining the possibilities of what that your days ahead can look and feel like. And it's really about designing life on your terms, and what does that look like, and to be able to do that in partnership with your spouse is just an incredible gift. to be able to accomplish that together. And that's we want to remove the fear and take that into motivation to really being creative about what your life can look like.
Mm. I want to share a story about one of my mentors. I have worked in aging and longevity for a long time. And one of my mentors is a guy named Harry Moody. And he's worked in with the AARP and in think tanks. And it was very interesting to me to watch how intentional he and his wife were as they went through a series of stages of retirement. So they lived on the East Coast. And they made a very intentional series of decisions. They moved to Boulder, Colorado, and got a house kind of up in the mountains because they were still both super healthy and they loved hiking and so on. But they were getting older, they were getting into their 70s. And so they also found a kind of intentional living community space that incorporated, independent living, but really fun activities, a very kind of hip version of a retirement community that they bought into. And so they got to know folks there early. And sure enough, Harry's wife needed care. And so they had a place to go. And they already had that kind of in place. And she ended up passing away. And then he moved closer to his kids. And what I found amazing was that they didn't avoid those hard conversations. They leaned right into those hard conversations and they planned for it. So they had their house in the mountains, but they had a backup plan and they had the kids. And I just found that to be so extraordinary because often we're afraid to think or talk about those top types of scenarios. And yet it seems to take the fear away when you can.
I think just to
What?
kind of add it too, like, and I know it's a setup, but it is the importance of being proactive and not reactive. It is much more difficult to make where you're going to live decision when somebody's had a stroke and they're in a care facility, right? Like it's a lot harder to move when the partner you've had can no longer help you make decisions. So to go through some of these steps and or to have a plan in place to know how to have the conversations is really important. And so I think that even as you talk about, that they had a plan, like think about who has had a retirement that you admire, right? What other couples do you see that are ahead of you that could mentor, that you admire how they have laid out their later years, their healthy ones in retirement, and then as those evolve. Because if you really think about technically the retirement season of life could very well be your longest season, right? Because we're looking at you could be retired for 25 to up to, potentially 40 years based on today's numbers. And it's a lot of time to fill.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to, see if there's any other questions that we have from all of you for Bob, for Amie, reflections on this topic. And to just kind of wind up here, one of the nice things about MEA is that we recognize that these transitions are not easy. And we create this space to come to that is beautiful and homey and cozy. And we cook like insanely yummy comfort foods for you. And there's fires going and it's small groups. So you're not in a hotel room doing all that kind of stuff. There's something real about giving yourself this opportunity to step out of your everyday life and move into an environment that's homey and supportive and comforting, to explore, to be inspired. And so I am just making sure I don't have any more questions. If anybody has any more questions, pop them in the chat. If you want to explore more about MEA, we actually have live people who pick up the phone. I know it's crazy in the world of AI. I mean, we do have an AI chat as well. So if you have questions like, what should I pack to come in January? We can help with that. But you can also book a call with our advisors and they will sit with you and hear your stories and talk through, is this the right workshop? We have other workshops. You have a friend who might want to come to MEA. What can you learn? So we're here to answer your questions. And yes, Barb Beck, thank you so much. Some of our alumni who come back to me are such a testament that what we have created offers real opportunity for change. I mean, Angie, thank you for telling your story, to have the courage to get certified and fly around the world with a new friend That to me is such a testament of what's possible, and how fun to make friends with new couples that you will get to know over the weekend, that you may decide to travel with or connect with or continue chatting with. Most of our groups who come through stay connected, that our alumni community is a vibrant and rich one. It's one of the only organizations that I know of that offers this, that most retreat centers, you come and you go. You're on a mailing list, you get a newsletter. But we have a whole department staffed. We have local chapters that you as a couple will be a part of, where you get to do other events with other MEA alumni in your area. If you want to travel, you can actually hook into the directory and find alumni who live all around the world, who are always happy to welcome you, take you for a hike, take you out to the local pubs and enjoy each other. Angie, you want to pop in? You've got something else to tell me? Come on up, my friend.
Literally, someone else in the workshop we visited in Australia when we went. Fantastic, really meaningful relationships. I just can't say enough about it. Thank you, Kari.
It is pretty cool that in this world that you can find a place like this where you can kind of restore your sense of faith and hope in humanity and yourself, in each other. So if you're on this call and your partner didn't get to hear this, and you're like, oh my God, they need to hear this, you will get the recording of this conversation emailed to you that you're welcome to share. It also will be on our website, MEA Wisdom. The team will put that in there. If you want the link to go directly to learn more about Bob and Amy's week, we'll pop that in the chat so you can go read more about it. You can book a call if you want to. You can share this with friends. I've had people say, oh, I want to bring my friends to this. So that'd be fun. If you have a couple of couples that are friends, how fun to go and do this together. Some have asked, can I stay longer? Of course you could stay longer. You could, book your trip to spend time with Bob and Amy and then go on into Santa Fe and enjoy the beautiful city. We're 30 minutes from Santa Fe. So it's a really fun idea to kind of bundle a trip. We also have workshops on both sides of Bob and Amy's weekend. So we also have folks who want to come and do like a whole week of MEA. So we have lots and lots of possibilities for you. So thank you, Bob and Amy. Any final last closing thoughts you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I think it's just important to invest in your relationship, and that's really what this boils down to. And again, like me being the more the transactional, like, hey, we're set up, we're good for retirement, and me being the nurturer, like for both of you, great, you got a financial plan. So make sure you have the personal plan too. So depending upon where you're in that relationship, you really have to think about what the other person may need too, because again, the finances are in order, but you really got to think about the nurture and the relationship and what they're going to need. And they need you to be on the same page, not just thinking about finances.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just really excited for the opportunity to be able to take this to MEA and just be really knee to knee and elbow to elbow to people that are, equally committed to just figuring out this next season of life for themselves and making the most of it.
Mm. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did. It was wonderful to have all of you here. Again, you'll get the recording sent to you by email. And I think Connor's got some music to take us out of here. So thanks again, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
I just can't believe the wonder of this feeling too.